We call this city council meeting for the city of Yamhill to order on Wednesday, March 12th at 6:33 p.m. We get a roll call, please.
Featherston here.
Husky here.
Corrigan here.
Hint here. Karen here.
All right, we all rise for a flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I just get paper towels? I got stove there.
Yeah. That's not a big surprise. If you do, you have to keep an eye on me. Geez, Louise, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad I saw that tumbler there. I thought maybe, no, I'm kidding.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Right. Good thing it's durable.
Yeah, and it's filtered waters.
Yes.
Not that
Don't you know
I'm
they have a water company in the city?
That was well water, clearly.
No vodka, no gin?
Slick back. I was looking all Mary looking tonight.
I just didn't wear a hat.
Oh, maybe that's it.
That's all it is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you know what's kind of cool is we have a whole brand new thing right now. So it's response to previous public comment. Yay.
Good
So
job.
the way that will probably work, and we're hoping that this is how it's gonna work, is that when you ask the questions during the public comment period, staff will do their best to get the answer for that question by the next meeting. Please. What? Are you disagreeing?
Your water's spilling.
Okay. So please do also understand that there are things that cannot be answered if it's a personnel issue, if there are some things that can't be answered, but we will try to let you know if those can't be answered, why they can't be answered. That seems fair. All right, so. You good, Angie? And then were you gonna do the? Or was?
Oh, so I guess I gotta
Yep,
do that for you
great.
now. Okay, sorry. I think we just had one question last time that we couldn't answer because it was obviously not a dialogue. So the other comments during public comment last time were all comments, and the only question was from Allison Simmons, who asked if motorized vehicles were allowed in the park, and the answer is no, which I think Angie posted on our Facebook page and was it our website also, or just the Facebook page?
I believe just the Facebook.
Basically just letting people know, no vehicles in the park, please be respectful of our park, it's a walking trail, et cetera. And I think hopefully people have been responsive to that, but so the official answer is no, there's no vehicles allowed in the park.
Okay, so is there going to be a sign put up or?
That's a question we would have to ask
No,
next
that's the
time.
question, okay. I'll hold that for one of
For the
my.
That was all I had for that
Thanks.
section.
Well, it sounds like that's already a question that we'll talk about. Okay, so if there's nothing else as far as the answers to previous questions, then we would move along to public comment. Yamhill encourages all citizens to comment on any city business. This is not a dialogue platform. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. If you need special accommodation or additional time, you should have already contacted Angie to be put on the agenda. Does anybody like to speak for public comment? Bob Davis does.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Corrigan and council members. My name is Robert Davis, 212 North Maple Street. I'm also the founder of the nonprofit Yamhill Neighborhood Association. I have several quick items. One is your item 3 with response to previous public comments. I think it's excellent. Thank you very much for doing that. You don't know how much we appreciate it. Your item 8, public hearing on ordinance, exterior lighting ordinance. It says first reading.
So any questions regarding that would have to wait until the hearing begins.
Okay, yep, good deal. Thank you. And my next question or comment is, Since I am a member of the Budget Committee, I would ask that 5 days to review the city's budget is not sufficient enough for me and my constituents to go through and to look it over. Scrutinize it if you will, but look it over from cover to cover. So I'm asking for the council and the mayor to move that to at least 7, 8, 10 days would be good. And think about it, because actually 5 days is not enough time. It's just not. And my last comment is our nonprofit is starting up its classes again. March 22nd of this month will be our first class. It is a series of 4 classes of 2 can't think of the word, 2 modules each from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. each day. These are the 22nd of this month, the 5th of next month, the 12th of next month, the 26th of next month. So it's 4 days of classes at 2 modules per day, total of 3 hours each day. This class will be 2 weeks ready. It is the newest and greatest and first time this class and this event has ever been taught in the state of Oregon for anybody. So we appreciate you guys getting the word out. We would appreciate council members showing up if you guys have the time. I know it's a lot to ask. It's 4 days, but it's spread out over a period of time and it's only 3 hours each class. You will learn a lot because it's based on Map Your Neighborhood and beyond. It goes into extreme detail into module. And that's it. Thank you so much.
How about who's presenting? How about who's presenting that?
Oh, yeah, okay, sure, sorry. The course is offered by Yamhill County Emergency Management and is being taught by the Office of Emergency Management and CERT member Jane Wolf in cooperation with Yamhill Neighborhood.
Is it free or is there?
It is free. Every course Yamhill does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sherry Wilson, it's your turn. Maybe. It says maybe.
Try not to knock
Right
my
here.
water over. Eric Wilson, 710 East Main Street. And my question is, are we going to put a sign up down at the walk?
Yes.
That's going to become, okay, awesome. I do want to thank, I don't know which officer's been parking in front of my house a little more often. See some movement there, so that's really nice because I talk about it. I don't know what I was gonna say, but it's my New Year's resolution about it. And so I'm glad. Thank you, Officer Graven or Chief Graven, for, I don't know if you're directing on that, but I do appreciate that. And I'm really glad Patty's on council. I think, you know, Chris for mentioning the fact that she was next in line on when we voted and thought it was reasonable that she did that. So thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Carol, did you want anything?
Did I have, what did I want to be?
You didn't, but I always like to give somebody an opportunity to change their mind. I just, because you didn't think of it on your way in, you want to give you a chance now, and I'll offer the same to Pam Kirsch next. Pam, did you have anything?
I don't think.
And, yeah,
Can I may say one more thing?
I don't think you used your whole 3 minutes, so
Okay.
sure, I'm just kidding.
Something we talked about at one point was that you have the public comment at the beginning of, and it's to, you know, now it's going to be to basically reiterate what happened meeting before, but it'd be nice if there was a public comment time at the end too, so maybe if there's some thoughts from whatever you guys come up with during the meeting, that, you know, if there was some input from the peanut gallery, it might be.
Thank you. Jenny Morrison
I'm gonna wait until the.
Okay. and Amy Brewer.
You get a podium now, okay? I didn't know. I had it all set, so I can do my, I'm Amy Brewer. I haven't met you, Shay, but this is for the Beverly Cleary Days, and we've been doing this for 6 years now. It'll be our 7th year. And this year we we just like to make you guys know what we're doing. Although I'm wanting to use this location right now, so I want to ask to use this facility, so I'll have to figure out how to do
Just
that.
contact, we'll schedule it.
Yeah, yeah. So this year we're having a children's writers workshop, and we have authors and a publishing editor person who's been involved in publishing for many years, and then she lives off Clickapat Street, which is a little bit of Beverly Cleary funness, and she's up in Portland. But so she's helping to like put this. We have a bigger flyer. I want to let you know this is just hot off the press. I will hand you this, but it's not legitimate just yet. But we have the workshops here for authors and writers. And then we want to have the same as we normally do is the community fun in the park. And this year we want to do the remote control races because that was a real big hit. And then I would like to do horse carriages from the Larson House to the park. If we can manage that, those are my big goals. And we're getting the stagecoach, which I really would like it in the park, but it would look really cool over there. If we had the horses, then that would be awesome because then they would take people to the park and we would have the jumpy house in the park, and the authors would go over there and read in the park to kids. Plus we have some volunteers that would be story path walkers and to help kids write stories and to illustrate. Those are all some of the things that are happening. Anyway, and we have this year we got a grant money, so we have funds to give $1,000 for an author that comes to our local public school. So that's all been because everybody likes Beverly Cleary and we keep getting money to do fun things. So
What's the date again?
May 9th and 10th. So the 10th is a Saturday and May 9th is when the authors and some of the people, the author visit to the school is there and to this school. So, yeah. Right.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we need any more of those?
Oh, geez.
So with that, is there anybody else that's here that would like to speak? I don't think there is. There's anybody online? Okay. Well, then we will move on to agenda updates or additions. Our city administrator.
There was a few items not included in your packet that was emailed out that you have copies inside your folder, and they include they were on your agenda item or on the agenda rather, but the physical paper was not included. So it's just the updated budget calendar for you guys to adopt later in the agenda and the updated council priorities for you to adopt, as well as a memo that I wrote for support for House Bill 3654, which I will ask council's approval of tonight. And then also a proclamation, which I think the mayor wanted to discuss. So those are the additions to the agenda.
All right. So the proclamation I have right here. So I don't know, I assume everybody would know that unfortunately recently our community lost a great member. Although he lived in Carlton, he was a great man in our community as well, Mike Larson. Always was a good guy to listen to anybody's problems, help out with sports teams, whatever he could do, and built a business here where we can eat pizza, which also is cool. So a couple of things with that. The city of Carlton also made a proclamation that was very similar, and in all honesty, we took a lot of what theirs was very heartfelt. So without taking anything away from them, ours is definitely patterned from his, which I'd like to read now. And it sounds very legalese, but whereas the city of Yamhill and its residents mourn the loss of Mike Larson, who was a friend to Yamhill, and whereas Mike's smile, enthusiasm, and energy touched the lives of many and brought joy to and inspiration to all who were privileged to know him, and whereas his commitment to our community his generous kindness and dedication to all committed to left, pardon me there, to all he committed to and left a lasting impact on our community. And whereas we recognize and honor the legacy as a good friend, neighbor, and community member whose spirit will live on our hearts. And whereas the city of Yamhill extends its deepest condolences to his family, his friends, and all who knew him. Now therefore, we, the mayor and city council of Yamhill, do hereby proclaim the city of Yamhill, remember and honor the life and legacy of Mike Larson. His memory will remain a cherished part of our community. And if I could get just a moment of silence to think about Mike, that would be wonderful and much appreciated. Okay, thank you, folks. And we also, Friday, will be asking Public Works to lower all the flags in the city to have staff. So it's a little emotional for me. He was the first person I met when I moved out here. And he was always there for me, no matter what. Made me feel at home here first. So thank you for the time on that. Okay. Moving to the consent agenda. We had some updates to minutes you wanted to include.
Yeah. They were just minor edits, but just for the record, on page 4, we had previously applied for a TSP grant through ODOT, and extra word that needs to be deleted came in with 5th out of 4 cities that were awarded. We were encouraged to reply. ODOT reached out to Walt and let him know that they were working. They reached out to me.
Okay.
And then the other one is just simply on page 5 that it should say list of the finalized mission statement and list of council priorities rather than potential goals. So I think those are just edits for if the council approves to adopt with those changes, and then we can have it or make those officially for the record.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. So with that said, did anybody have further questions on the minutes? Or were we happy with or adjusting them like that? We can move that to new business if anybody wanted to discuss it further.
I don't have any questions on the minutes. I do have a question on the financial statement.
Is that something you'd like to move to new business?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that, or do we just do that?
Maybe move it and then approve the motion would be to approve the consent agenda. Minus
the minute.
financial statement.
With the edits to the
With
minute
that
and
minus.
without the minute.
But now, would it make more sense, Angie or Shelley, to move the consent agenda to after new business so that it can be discussed? And we could approve it afterwards if that was possible. That would make things smoother in the long run, I think. Is that okay? Okay. So we will just, we'll push that to after new business. Which would then bring us to committee reports. Do we have, there's nobody for the planning commission today. And then economic development, I assume you were going to speak, Jenny?
Yes. Thank you. We met last week and we keep reviewing our kind of buckets of priorities for the Economic Development Committee, and we have them kind of in these elements: parks, public square, historic designation, beautification, local merchant support and retention, and business recruitment. And a lot of these things sort of tie together because if we make the city more beautiful and enhance buildings and recruit certain businesses, it'll be kind of a nice, growing endeavor. So with that, the next steps that we have are to, we have a map of properties around town and which properties are vacant, and the commercial buildings, which have the potential to be revitalized, which have the potential to be rented out. And so we're going to have a walking tour and you're all welcome to join us at our next meeting, to kind of just get eyes on, okay, exactly what's in our commercial district and get a sense of, okay, what are the possibilities? And then with that, we'll also be coming up with an engagement plan with the property owners to figure out ways to do some outreach and see how we can support meetings and what that could do. Then we also have a new position available. Sue Richardson resigned from the committee, and so we have a vacancy. From the planning commission. And, oh, yes, yes, but as the planning commission representative, yes, thank you. And those are the key things. Also, we do want to be collaborating with city council when you guys have your work sessions on the historic designation objectives. So we will be helping support that as well. Anything else, Robert?
When's the next meeting with the walking tour?
April 1st, 3 to 4 p.m.
I should probably just add, and this goes for planning commission too, Jenny just mentioned the work session with council, which was a request of mayor and the council to do that with our committees. So I think hopefully next month, depending on how the budget process goes, we'd like to schedule that work session for EDC and the council, but then also planning commission Monday night at their meeting. They're going to sort of hold a priority whole planning session like council did so that they can come prepared to the work session. So that would probably be a report for planning commission that I probably should have mentioned. Jenny's. Oh.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, so moving on to a public hearing. So the public hearing is an exterior lighting ordinance for non-residential properties, first reading. So our hearing procedure as we open it would follow Yamhill Code 10.128.150. And we now open the public hearing for the adoption of ordinance 0-544, exterior lighting ordinance. This hearing is to adopt the exterior lighting ordinance, which will introduce a new chapter, chapter 10.66, exterior lighting standards into our development code. Per our municipal code, ordinance adoption requires approval by the majority of council at 2 meetings, or the council may adopt an ordinance at a single meeting by unanimous approval, provided that the proposed ordinance is available to the public at least 1 week before the meeting. We met that. This ordinance was previously brought before the council September 11th, 2024. And the hearing was closed with a list of considerations sent to the planning commissions. These conditions include parks, safety at Beulah Park and other parks along nearby residents. That had to do with whether the lights would be turned off at the park to accommodate for this lighting ordinance. Many people felt that we should have security lights at the park. Street lights, turning off street lights could create a safety hazard for drivers. I would agree with that, and I think ODOT would too. ODOT approval, does the city have permission from ODOT to change the lighting on the state highway? PGE, does the city have the capability to change the street lighting as PGE may control the wattage? Business safety. The council remains concerned about the security for businesses. Definition. The council requests a clear definition of what constitutes emergency lighting. City property. Will turning off lights create security issues for city properties? Further, will there be a burden to the city's budget to comply with a 6 months compliance period? Since the change would, the changes over is not currently in the budget. Then timing. The council would like to adjust the requirement to adhere to new rules to be longer than 6 months. The planning commission revised the ordinance to conform with the council's consideration and held a second public hearing for the ordinance. Those changes included the order of recommendation provided to council on February 12th, 2025. The ordinance with changes was noticed and is available to the public as of February 26, 2025. So with that, I have to read the next thing to make sure. Item 2, right. So it would be a statement by the hearing body regarding rehearing contracts, bias, prejudice, or personal interest shall be made, and to call for abstentions. So. First public hearing, sorry. So I guess you would ask the question, right? Does anybody have any prejudice, personal interest that should be noted at this point? Read for council. No, I say, so this would be a vote for council.
Oh.
Yeah. And then the public hearing portion, yeah, that would be where you would come in, and that would be next. So we're asking, I believe this is correct, we're asking for objections to jurisdiction, challenges to the hearing body's qualification to make this matter, or to hear this matter shall be stated. So if nobody challenges our authority to make lighting adjustments, then we have the order of presentation. So we have a staff report, which would be literally the document that was emailed over to us to review. Does everybody have a chance to review the lighting ordinance? And then, so this would be the public comment portion, I believe, which is the proponents. If there was, is that correct, Angie? That they would have a chance to speak in favor of a lighting ordinance? Did you want to speak, Bob, to it?
I do.
Go for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry for how clunky that was.
No, no, no.
We'll try to smooth it out towards the next few bits of the alphabet.
It's your first.
There you go.
So I just have I guess it's a question more than it might even be just a comment, but September 11th, 2024, there was a discussion about the same proposed lighting amendment. I would assume that that would be first reading. February 12th, 2025 was discussed again. I would consider that another reading, whether it's first, second, or third, I have no idea. But you list in your agenda, item 8, as this being a first reading, which to me is most incorrect.
So the reason that it would be considered a first reading is because the document's been changed to make the adjustments that council directed planning to make. That would make the previous documents invalid, and then that would then be the first reading of the final draft.
Okay. I thought so, but I just wanted to make sure.
That's how I understand it.
Yes, thank you much.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I am proponent of it.
Fantastic. And then, so the principal or applicant likely would be the planning commission, who is not here tonight.
If there's any other pros.
What, was there any pros? I didn't see any hands for pros. Oh, I'm sorry, miss, go ahead.
Well, I just didn't know if, do I have to go with it?
You've got to go.
Since I'm here, and what my concern as a person was, because I don't want that gas station there in the first place, but you know, would that be something that you would tell them to shut their lights off at a reasonable time? I actually don't even see it because I'm not really there, but if I was, you know, driving through, or if I was a person who was on the main drag, I think it's a bit of a lighting pollution if they have their super high lights. When they started going in, I had no clue that they were gonna be so tall and that their lights would come down so much. I kind of think that that's an eyesore, and it's a bit of a bummer for us cute little quaint town to be run over like that by the big bully gasoline industry people who took over our town without us really wanting to know about it. Sorry, that's my feelings. So if there's anything that you can use toward that to maybe sympathize with people who might be interested in, you know, regulating their lights.
So, you know, in this, there are lumen restrictions, time restrictions, things like that for businesses. I think we're actually gonna be reading the entire. Is that right, Angie?
If someone requests Otherwise, it would just be the title and the substantial changes.
Understood. But that is something that, if you wanted to read through, we could. I think that's available. Is that available on the website?
Yes, and this ordinance is for any non-residential properties within the city of Yamhill.
So that affecting the
The
gas
lighting
station.
ordinance would affect any non.
Thank you. I'll say something.
Yes, please, Carol.
Usually talk, but the lighting issue has always been an issue with me, and I do live on the backside. And it is on bright all night. It lights up the Quonset hut, and subsequently, since I'm a resident, it's a pain. I don't know what the lighting regulations are. I didn't get to read what they are, but if they're supposed to be shut off at a certain time at night. Is that anything? I don't,
So
if I,
you're speaking to the fire department sign.
no.
Okay, so the gas station
It's
itself.
the gas station, and right, I mean, there's a section that's right between the fire station and the Quonset hut. Those lights are high enough and
Mhm.
bright enough so that it shines right down there and really illuminates that area. I don't know if you've noticed it, Jay. I mean, you live close to me. You're not on my side of the street looking at it.
I have the old Pythian building that locks.
Oh, yeah.
Next to the fire hall.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me see here really quick.
This address.
It does.
So I mean, my question is there a time at night that they are supposed
I'm
to?
actually looking for that right
It is,
now.
it's 1 hour after.
Is it 1 hour after?
Yeah.
Okay, so does that include those huge lights that light up the pumps? Cause that's the ones that,
canopies? Are you talking about the
Ordinance
cans?
And not for complaints on specific buildings. Just a point of.
Yes, that is true. But so if we were speaking in generalities,
okay,
that Patty's correct. I believe that it's 1 hour afterwards.
okay.
The only exception that would be made to, it was for any business with a 24-hour operation
Okay.
would not be.
Mine was a question, but I mean, it was a complaint, but it wasn't a question because I don't know what the lighting regulations were. It was my understanding that they were supposed to be shut off.
So the entirety of this is available on the on the city's website.
Okay, so I
And-
could read it.
I feel, this is me speaking personally, that a lot of good work was done by the planning commission to come up with some well-thought language to control some of the lights in town.
Okay,
I think,
well, I'll
yeah.
read it and then, I mean, I guess it was an observation and maybe a little bit of a complaint, but just I didn't understand what the ordinance was, what the rules were. I'll read it though. Thank
Okay.
you. Okay.
The general regulations E, C, and F, I think address those.
They do, but I think Angie had a wonderful point, which is that this is supposed to be about the overall and not the specific building. But so all of those things are discussed in here, including canopy lightings, parking lot lightings, lighting curfews, security lighting, the color of the lights, publicly owned lights, things like that.
Yeah, okay.
So it was very thorough. I think. Yeah. Was there anybody else that would be a proponent, would like to speak? Okay.
So my question is, they talk specifically about the color on H, that it can't exceed 3,000 kelvins. And then farther up here on B says the maximum brightness, the brightness for any one lamp currently limited to 1,500 lumens. Two things on that. Do we have something that measures those? And has anybody walked through Yamhill at night to see how many of our businesses are affected by this ordinance? And then the second one is, where do you take that reading? Are you taking it from the center of the road in front on all sides? Or are you taking it from the sidewalk right in front of the business? Where is that measuring point?
So, yeah,
So if I can add to that, when they do check the nits on that, they do take it from various points to your degree. So it's at the sidewalk, centered to the left and to the right of it. And that's how they measure it. But we had to go to an electrician to actually get those readings. We had to basically contract out And this is in regards to, say, the fire sign. So we used,
So anytime we have a question on if somebody's complying with this, we have to go to an electrician to come.
correct, the contractor.
That's
to
an
measure it.
expense to the city.
Correct.
Is there not a tool?
So we actually, there's a section coming up for us to discuss and so forth, I think. So if we could finish up with anybody with proponents for this, is there anybody else that would like to speak? And then it's lists just others, and then there's no others, it would be opponents. And now just
And then just close the
Doesn't matter.
public comment.
it would be closing public comment. And we're moving on to questions of proponents and opponents from the floor. Council, and this would be the time I would think that would be appropriate for us to discuss it. Is that correct, Angie?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to get us to where we're supposed to be first. So I believe that there was language that was in there that would it affected people off of their property, so forth, like, for example, the street light issue was that it would be if it affected the neighboring property. Right, so if it was, all the lighting was contained to their property and they followed the timeframes and the curfews, it would be unaffected. It was only when that light left that property. And then who would it be affecting and that sort of thing. If you did have to go in, if somebody had a big problem with lumens, then that would be, somebody would have to come out with equipment for that, I would imagine.
You probably try to work through the issue.
Right, I think you can work through issues before having to pay for somebody to come out. That said, you have to have somebody that's willing to work, right? So. Just want to make sure we're,
I'm listening.
oh, no, I just think you didn't have anything, I didn't know where. I think would you have a computer issue, not be able to ask a question if you had something. So everybody read through, there's any more questions for council has?
I don't have any questions for that. I went to a lot of the planning commission meetings.
Was there any public agency that would like to speak to this? You do. Do we have any letters that were sent to
I
us?
did not receive any correspondence regarding this.
Were there any, at this point, any proponent rebuttals that would like to be made? And I did ask that because there was nobody physically online, is that right?
We still have nobody online.
Okay. And then staff recommendations, I think that would be literally that they sent it back to us to have it read.
They recommend that you.
And the recommendation, what? So moving on with that would be the close of the hearing and deliberation. The hearing body shall either make its decision and state the findings of fact or contribute, or continue deliberation at a subsequent date. So they have provided us here with sample motions. So you would have the motion to approve with conditions, or deny this. So the motion for approval would be, did you guys all have a copy of that? Okay. So if we can look through that. And at that point, I would ask for a motion.
Based on the findings of fact and recommendations presented in the order of recommendation and testimony received, that the council approve ordinance 0544 exterior lighting standards.
Second,
I second the motion.
we had a vote.
Featherston. Nay.
SEI.
Corgan, aye.
And I.
Caroline.
So this would be, I believe, a continuing resolution then, Angie, so it doesn't have to be reposted, but it does have to be read a second time.
Yeah, and that would be, on April 9th. It's 30.
Fantastic. And by continuing it like that, it does not need to be reposted publicly, is that true? Correct. Fantastic. Okay. So closing the public hearing and moving to unfinished business would be to adopt and revise the budget calendar.
Yeah, so you guys adopted the calendar last month and we discovered that there was not an error, but a need to make a change. So the new calendar reflects the change, which is Tuesday, April 8th will be the budget non-mandatory process review meeting. It's not a public meeting, no testimony is taken, but it is an opportunity for the budget committee to get together and sort of just go over the process for how the budget process is going to go. We'll just give a little education on that. So we just, because this is an adopted document, we need to re-adopt it. And that is my request of council. Adopt the new version. It should be. Previous date was March 11th, which was yesterday.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's hard to go back.
Yeah.
And do we need a motion for that?
I believe so, since we have to vote to adopt it.
Okay. So can we get a motion to adopt the revised budget calendar?
I make a motion, we adopt this revised budget.
Second? I second.
I don't have a copy, so.
Fantastic.
Motion.
All right, can we get a vote?
Featherston, aye.
SDI.
Oregon, aye.
And I,
Karen, I.
And the second, oh, sorry, I'll let you.
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry, I was totally want to let you go for it. So the next unfinished business is to adopt the updated council priorities.
This document is just similar to the calendar. It's just an edit to an original, previously adopted document, the mission statement and your priorities. We just have a change to priority number 8 from the word affordability to livability because council decided at retreat that was a better representation of what they're trying to communicate. And so we just need a formal adoption of that.
Okay, can we get a motion to adopt the updated council priorities?
I make a motion, we adopt the updated council priorities.
Fantastic.
Kowski second.
Can we get a vote?
Featherston, aye.
SDI.
Oregon, aye.
and I,
Karen, I.
All right. That was easy. What about, so moving on to new business, we would be discussing the support for House Bill 3654. And Shelley has information on that for us, I think.
Yeah, so I sent this to council to review. This is a memo that I wrote on behalf of city council, and I'm asking for council's support tonight to submit this to the legislative committee, the members of the House Committee on Emergency Management, General Government and Veterans Affairs, in support of House Bill 3654, which is a small cities grant match bill. And you have the full language in front of you for what I would submit, and this would become public testimony from city council to this committee. But essentially what we're just asking for is for them to consider our request for them to support and give a hearing to this bill, which would create a cap based on population for the amount of matching dollars small cities have to come up with for grants. So this is a coalition of small cities that created this bill, and their lobbyist and I were connected, and I drew our support behind this, and I'm asking for council's support to submit this on your behalf.
Did you guys all have a chance to look at that? I thought that was fantastic. I mean, even for large cities, we all got the email that McMinnville is having budgetary issues, and being able to cap the matching funds to be able to get grants would be actually a wonderful thing for all towns.
Is there any chance that say you have, I mean, I'm sure they're out there, but even smaller cities with smaller budgets, is there a chance that this would open it up and make it even harder to get grants because then you'd have even more cities applying
Potentially.
for that money?
I mean, potentially it could increase the pool, but the state is still gonna have the same amount of money that they submit based on your application, so I mean, that is a possibility. But if you can't even apply for it because you don't
Yeah.
have the matching funds, then you have no chance. So,
This sort of even the playing field, I would think.
yeah, it creates a little bit more equity for smaller cities who have smaller budgets and have no way of increasing those budgets. And also, I should mention State Representative Elmer, our rep, is a co-sponsor on this bill. So,
Can we give an example so that everybody out there knows what this is all about as far as the percentage is concerned?
so for example, if we want to apply for a grant for a major public works project, a lot of times the city we can apply for that grant, but we have to be able to show that we can provide matching funds to a certain percentage. Oftentimes, it's about 20%. So for example, for the FEMA tank, it was I don't know, what was it, $2.1 million project or more than that? And we were required to come up with $875,000 in matching funds, which we didn't have, which is a huge amount for a small city. And so we were able to piece together some things, but that was a very rare instance where that can happen. So in the future, if they were to cap that percentage requirement for cities of our size, 1,100, and by the way, this small cities consortium is 20,000 population and less. So we're competing against cities with 20,000, not 1,100 or 1,200 like we have. So we're the small, smallest of the small. So if they capped it based on our population, then we might only have to come up with 5% or 10% or something. And maybe the 20,000 population city would have to come up with, the 50 would have to come up with the 20 or
So
so.
it's a huge difference from. what
So
it is
it's
now.
a lot more reasonable for us to try to come up with 5% of whatever that project is than 20.
There's plenty of grants that we would like to have that we can't apply for,
Right.
you know.
I think it's a great idea.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and we don't see any reason why it wouldn't get bipartisan support. So right now it's all Republicans that are signed on to it, but the lobbyists that I was talking to thought that the Democrats would be able to support it too. So it seems like it should. And it shouldn't have any fiscal impact on the state, so they can still give the same amount.
Is there anybody that was concerned with this at all?
No, I'm for it.
So, and you just need our approval. It sounds like you would
So I
have.
just am gonna submit this on behalf of council if you guys approve. I just need your approval.
I approve. Really?
We need a vote on
We need a vote?
it.
So we need a motion. Patty, it's your turn.
How do you want me to say that? Just
Make a motion.
I make a motion to approve House Bill 3654.
Approval, or council approval for House
Council
Bill.
approval for House Bill 3654.
For the city administrator to submit it on the
Oh.
council's behalf.
Okay, for the city administrator to submit on behalf of the council
Perfect.
for the city.
I second the motion.
You get that, Angie?
Yeah, I'm hoping the recording got it.
Well, if the recording got it, we'll need a vote.
Featherston, I.
Ask, yeah.
Corey and I.
And I,
Karen, aye.
All right.
Okay.
And then next on new business would be the summary of council goals.
I can share, did you want to say anything about the retreat before I start or?
Sure. I thought it was a great retreat. We all met, it was a public meeting. A work session where we actually focused in. I don't know if anybody's been to these meetings before where we have 5,000 things on the board. Everybody writes down what we ought to get accomplished. We discuss it for 15 minutes and leave it alone forever. This was not like that. This focused us in onto very specific things.
Who went? This the council?
So it was a public meeting and everybody was invited to, but only the council showed up along with Angie, who was a recorder there, and a recorder who was there, and our city administrator who was there. And we had brought in a lady who was a facilitator of this meeting. And I'll be honest with you, I was quite suspect going into that thing. But I've been to several of these planning meetings and it just never works out well. But she really focused us in, and we actually came up with timelines that I'm sure Shelley or our city administrator will discuss. You guys, it was
It was good. It was productive.
very much so. Surprising. It was wonderful.
Good,
So-
okay. Thanks for that feedback. So just for everybody's information to sort of iterate what I think council already knows, but to summarize. The council's top 8 priorities that they identified for the next 2 years are: number 1, economic development; number 2, water stability; number 3, financial sustainability; number 4, emergency management; number 5, public safety; number 6, communication; number 7, parks; and number 8, livability. And so during the retreat, we just focused on the first 4 council priorities because that's what we had time for. And for each of those, we identified 1 to 2, sometimes 3 actual goals with timelines and sort of council assignments to each goal, working with staff. So for economic development, goal 1 was beautification and restoration of the CBD. That ties in line a lot with what the EDC is doing as well. So that work session, I think, will be informative there. And then there's specific action items, which I'm not going to go into right here, that were identified at the retreat about what exactly can be done for beautification and restoration of the downtown. And then goal 2 was identify authentic Yamhill. I'm using quotes because that's how it was listed. But basically that includes creating an opportunity for the community to come together as a whole and identify what does it mean to keep Yamhill Yamhill, to keep it Yamhill and be authentic. And that involves a community town hall and then several discussions beyond that, and some dates and deadlines to inform that. And you know, the purpose of that obviously is to increase the aesthetic appeal of the downtown, so more people will want to come and visit and bring their business here and shop here and increase the revenue to the community while keeping Yamhill Yamhill. That's the goal. So that's number 1. And then priority 2 is water stability. And the goal 1 for that was getting the water contracts updated, which we are going to discuss tonight. The first step in that was getting a copy of the contracts to all the council, which was done. You guys review it and initiate the conversation tonight, and then maybe, you know, continue that next month, depending on how things go. So that one's already underway. And then goal 2 was to research water alternatives beyond the Merkley grant money, which is still one of the things we're pursuing, but because we're waiting on those funds to come, in the meantime, what are some other alternatives? Like piping from the plant creek to the plant and things like that. So that was goal 2 for water stability. And then priority 3 was financial sustainability, and goal 1 we identified was inventorying and enforcing Airbnbs to bring in the income to the city for that, which I believe Oski's already begun working on that with staff. And then goal 2 was identifying cost savings in our budget, which pretty much aligns with kind of the budget process that's coming up, and everyone will have a chance to look at the budget and see if there are areas to, you know, reduce costs essentially. And that will help obviously with the priority of financial sustainability. Priority 4 was emergency management, which kind of turned into 3 goals. 1 was to create an emergency communication plan for the staff, for city staff, to know sort of what their roles are and what to do in an emergency using the emergency operations procedures manual that was updated last year. And so that conversations about that have already begun as well. And then from that plan, we also are going to be planning some emergency operation procedural practices with staff and eventually with city council and some tabletop exercises to kind of run through scenarios of what you actually do in an emergency. And once those staff and council meetings happen, then I think at some point, maybe in the summertime or sometime, we'll do it like a community-wide event, similar to what Carlton recently did. And then the third goal under emergency management is looking at options for finding funds for a new emergency operations center, which would include city hall, police department, community center, potentially library. So that's a much bigger, much longer term project, but getting the ball rolling and looking at where can we start finding some funds for that. So those were the 4 areas we worked on during retreat and the goals that came out of that.
The timeframes for those were.
They're all over the place, so I'd have to provide you that.
We
We
were
do have
focusing on like 2 to 3, right?
Pardon?
Like short term.
Some of those were short-term and some of them were on the long.
Some are short and some are long, and there will be a document that I produce once I'm able to. We just had our debrief today, actually, so once I'm able to kind of consolidate all this information, it'll be in an Excel spreadsheet that'll show the counselor, the dates and all of that with it, but I do have those, yeah.
Not really time for it, but
Well, I thought the high school, one of the domes were, one of those were supposed to be for emergency.
I will talk to you about that after, but yeah, make sure, grab me afterwards and we'll talk about that. That's a good question. And we can talk more to that.
That was part of the financing, but following.
So the next on new business would be the water contract discussion. So council, we all received copies of the outside water district contracts. Those contracts go back years, 60s. They've been renewed periodically throughout. Seems like the last of the contracts were sort of updated late 90s. With some additions and some subtractions. We all got copies of them. Did everybody have a chance to kind of review and go through them, and if anybody want to give them initial thoughts?
Obviously, something needs to be done with them.
Yeah.
There's one part that says, referring to water restrictions, it mentions like non-critical uses for the outside customer, outside district.
Outside
customer.
district, yeah.
Non-critical uses including but not limited to lawn sprinkling, irrigation, car washing, and livestock uses. Would the city really, like, the livestock uses, isn't that like, I mean, obviously, you have cows or horses or something. Is that not critical? Like, so we're expecting them to go without water?
So, yeah, so but this one has been a source of contention for all the years, right? So the thing is it says for residential use only. And for domestic animals, right? So it's
No
not
domestic use.
domestic use.
Domestic use.
And so that was my other question is what is that?
I would assume it means not livestock.
Cause you're selling your house then probably, you're using them for business.
Well, I think the idea of originally of the outside water districts was to be able to provide drinking water and hygiene water to the houses that were outside of the city limits, but still close enough where we could stretch a pipe to them. I think some of the concerns that people have had both ways is that nobody's ever really enforced much of that, right? And so, I mean, there was a thing that was said for a period of time was if you name your cow, then it's a domestic animal. But the literal definition says that is not the case. So that being said, I mean, that's kind of what we're discussing, right? Is this the contract that we want to keep? It does say the council has the right to amend those contracts or to define language of these contracts.
I feel like you could spend even more time on this than we did with the lighting order.
I think we spent a ton of time on this.
The purpose of these contracts, though, is not to supply water to farmers, vineyards, all of that. It was to supply water to households.
Mhm.
And it's grown from there. And so part of the problem is that there's more users now than there were in the contracts, and I don't know if you're aware of that, Shay.
I am, I'm also, I don't know if you're aware that it's in the contracts that no users can be added
Exactly.
unless approved by an authorized body. So I actually have gone through some of those, and those were all city employees that approved those changes throughout the years.
How come the contract hasn't been updated?
So if you've noticed, the way that they did things was literally things marked with pins with signatures next to them with adjustments made to an existing contract. So to me, even if we all agreed that this contract is absolutely perfect in its form right now, I definitely think from 1997, the way things were done then, that we maybe could update and re-sign all of these contracts
Right.
at the minimum. But that is kind of the discussion. Is this the one we want? Are there changes that need to be made? And I think that our city administrator had a good point of actually to run it through legal before we have them re-signed to make sure that it's up to today's standards legally.
My only concern with all of this, and I've said it before, is that because it's considered surplus water, and I've wrote this with council before, is that if anything, as far as building is concerned, we will continue to have to build even if we don't have, until we get the hookup between Mac or Hillsborough, whatever direction it goes, we will continue to have to build because of the fact that it states surplus water.
We have to build
Homes,
The urban growth boundary.
Right.
The districts.
So there's no plan currently to expand an urban growth boundary, and an urban growth boundaries expansion would, be years.
okay, but who was it that came in and said we have this 35 acres wherever in the city that is buildable?
The planning grants or something.
Yeah, so 35 acres, I don't know how many homes you can put on 35 acres, but if they,
It would be approximately 65, we learned today, while helping a young man with his senior project. at the high
Okay.
school.
Yes.
Yes.
so an additional 65 homes, and with the 57 that were built or that's in the process of being built, and the 62 or whatever it was that was built over here.
But now remember, that's potentially 65 either newly built or redeveloped. So
Right.
some of those will already be connected to water. And the other thing to think about is we don't, other than I believe the 3 acres towards the end of Olive Street and some area that borders into a floodplain,
Right.
there's not a continuous area for development. So it would not very unlikely that this new development would be a development. It would be an individually built house on property that hasn't been built on in the last 120 years of our existence.
Okay, so that's like I say, that's my only concern, because the outside districts have been here forever, in my opinion, because of I've only been here a little over 20 years, but cutting them off just willy-nilly because we have to, by state guidelines, have to build.
So
Because they're not
there's,
being taken into consideration.
there was from what we understand from our grant guys in the technical assistance grants on the housing, there is no mandate that says you have to have a 20-year building supply for a town of this size.
Are you saying that you'd like to see it adjusted from surplus water to basically on the same level as?
Included within, and I don't know how they would be able to do that. But and I always address it this way, that if the outside districts and the city were a water district as a whole, that's the only way in my mind that I can think of it, so that they would not be considered surplus water. But then if in the event that happens, there has to be strict guidelines for the farmers, the wineries, the mushroom farm, the Fitzgerald Farms out here that does, they do training, you know, horses, they have camps out there. All of that, there's, you know, the animals are getting the water. It's not just for domestic use only.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does need to be updated. But we probably need to like decide how big of a project this is gonna.
But make sure they're only resident.
It gets
Just
very complicated.
So you guys are aware, I don't know if everybody's aware, but we don't have anybody online tonight, but in order to preserve this for public record, it has to be able to be replayed on video through the website. And when we're whispering it in the audience, it makes it difficult to hear because the speaker's right over you guys. It doesn't seem like it, but it really picks it up. It makes it difficult to hear. But, sorry for that.
Mayor, can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
So she brought this up before, months back when we were dealing with this, and I was already in conversations with our attorney about this. Then I did mention that, and they advised against removing the word surplus because we wouldn't be able to protect the citizens of Yamhill in an emergency. So for whatever that is worth,
And I get that.
yeah,
I mean,
that
I
was,
do.
that was their advice.
So when we discussed it at one point in the past, and I don't recall if it was on planning or if it was in council, likely it could have been with planning. I think we were advised that the only way to bring them in would be literally be to expand the boundaries of the city limits to encompass their homes, which would then, like, literally it would change. So your farm could now be subdivided into 4,000 square foot lots, and it would make the city of Yamhill like Hillsborough.
Yeah, that's not good.
Now, first of all, and Carol will attest to this, when we were in the water crisis and those houses were being built, you know, in the new development, we were all very concerned for the outside water districts. And I think the thing is nobody has any desire to turn those off.
Right.
And I think that our focus should be very much on to bring enough water into the city where that does not become a problem. Right?
Right.
So I think that we have some things on our, potentially on the near horizon that could, we hope, hate that word hope. But that's what we have to strive for, right? So, you know, with the eventuality of Merkley money, hopefully to study transmission lines and anything that we can do, you know, I mean, to bring water in, I think honestly, to bring them in, just, it doesn't seem like a possibility legally.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I didn't mean incorporate them into the city, because that's something just way off base from this.
Cause it literally would be, I mean, if we hooked them up and got rid of the outside districts and said it's not surplus water, then it would be Jason and his crew in charge. All of the pipes that have been in the ground since the 60s would have to likely come out and be replaced. And we know what that costs by the Olive Street project. So I mean, you're talking, the amount of money that you'd be talking to make that a thing would probably be similar to a transmission line to another town that had a massive amount of water, if not more. So.
Okay, so the most current contract, which is Dryer Lane, that's the one that I got, because there had been no previous contract for them. That one would be the most current out of all of them. And that was just done here just a couple of years ago, I believe.
22.
22, that was the additional house that was, right? I believe.
No, Dryer
Or
Lane.
was that the entire district that was
Yeah,
created?
Dryer Lane has never had a contract.
I looked at so many of those things.
Yeah, no, Dryer Lane had never had a contract. It was, I don't even know how many people, there's 6 people, 6 users on that one. And that's the most recent contract out there. There's a couple other districts that have the same or similar contract. But that one is specific. It provides all the information as far as domestic use only. They have to, you know, contact the city if they want to add any additional users. That has everything involved in it that some of the other contracts didn't.
So, if I understand Dryer Lane, that would be the Fred Step. Water
Yes,
district.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's technically one property.
It's one property with 6 hookups
Right,
because of tax lots.
but that's the most current.
Well, so I think we can all agree, I think we can all agree that we should update the contracts and get them all current and have, and can we also agree that they should all be identical? To update this?
Like, this is gonna be a really big project with a lot of like lawyer.
I don't think so. I think that we could literally take a copy of one of the contracts without a name put on it. We have a blank one here, right? Yeah?
I have a blank one.
So the reality of it is I think we could look it over and say if we just agreed on it, then send it out to legal and make sure that that no law's been updated if our older contract is contradictory to, yeah.
There was only one
It's
change,
extraordinary.
Shay, there was only one change on the 2 most recent contracts, and that was the Title III, I think is what Dryer Lane has. And there was a Title I want to say on the one that was newest behind that one. And that was it. That was the only difference between the two.
Shirley, did you have those contracts? I guess. Well, so I guess maybe what we should be looking at is instead of going into the minutia of all the details of every single contract is to look at one contract and then see if we can update them to that.
And that should be that most current one.
This is
which
the most current one and this is the one that most of them are on.
What was the Dryer Lane one? You said that's the Fred Step?
Red Step was the name of the
Yeah.
I
district.
have that, and it doesn't say Dryer Lane on mine.
Yeah, well.
That's what I was, I just want to make sure we were talking about the same thing.
It's because all of the information that I have is associated with Dryer Lane, because that's where it's at. His name was never associated with any of the information, because there was no contract for
And
him.
that was done May of 2022, so
Yeah.
that's probably, that's gotta be what he's looking
It's
Yeah.
my understanding that it was under someone else prior to that.
at.
There was another, maybe forum, another name that it was under prior to. Fred Step.
Yeah, I don't know who is.
Yeah, but that
is the name that's.
The one that's, this one is dated May of 2022.
Yeah,
But everybody's familiar with the most updated copy, that's the standard that everybody's on. Did anybody have any major changes they would like to see made to these contracts? I mean, other than enforcement, they seem rather thorough. Anything that needs to be removed, added, adjusted?
There's one.
Typos would be corrected. It would be checked with legal and then, there was an idea that, the office manager had. Did I just trigger somebody's Facebook? Which would be the idea potentially of having everybody on the water, so every water district sign sort of a president, a leader, what have you, whatever that terminology is to have them come in sort of a work session in order to look over the contracts, have them bring their most current version, as some of these things were adjusted by marking out words and signing them off.
right.
We were able to identify everybody's signature on those though today. Thought that was
Okay.
pretty cool. Cause I didn't know, these initials. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? It would shorten the, Process.
To them.
And one comment that I heard in multiple council meetings when people from the water districts were here is people that were in the district, but not the head of the district, had no idea about what the contract said.
well,
So-
so that's a problem, but that really is nothing that the city could do. I mean, that's
Right,
between
right.
them and their water district at that point, which it would be unfortunate if it signed and didn't read.
But the people that are within the district are clueless about what any of those contracts say.
So you're saying that maybe
They
they're
should
watering
have
their
copies.
livestock and they don't know they're not supposed to.
Yep.
Okay. Well, and that could be something that we could, so there are several things in here. For example, here it says, in their water contract, section 6, the number of connections. This one was interesting. Quote, 1 residential connection, end quote. Why would that be in quotes?
I have no idea.
So to me, it still means it's 1 house, right? So quote doesn't excuse. Right? So that was an argument that has been made. And I would disagree with that, but I think those are the things that we could have legal adjust, is to take out the quotes. Right? That maybe we could better define what domestic animals are. There are options other than city water to water your cow. We have a well on our farm. It's 3 miles outside of town. We're just at the end of everybody's water district and can't get hooked up. But we find ways to have water out there. Is that kind of where we're thinking with this thing? Is to have it reviewed by legal? Is there any major changes that anybody would want other than things would come from them? Is that where you were thinking?
Yeah, I think get feedback from council and whatever that is, compile that information, I'll present it to legal, get their feedback and then bring that back to you guys. And then have that work session with the districts so that we can present the new contracts to them, get any feedback from them. I suppose maybe we want to do that.
But maybe what we could do is take a few days through the weekend, maybe. And then if we all emailed, I believe this is avoiding serial conversation. If we all reviewed this version of the water contracts and had any concerns for the city administrator to bring to legal's attention, and they were only directed towards her, don't send it to everybody, then she could pass that on to legal, and then we could have a version of this come back, or just have them say that this is perfect as is. And then we could move to the next step, bring the districts in to have them sign new contracts. And then I really think that we should have into that contract as well, a renewal period. This does sort of indicate that council can look at it January's, but I think that it should be reviewed either annually or every other year or something like that. We could maybe come up with language for that.
Sure. Here's that to it.
Everybody happy with that? Cool, so maybe like Monday or so we could,
That's fine.
if anybody has anything that they want to turn in just between now and then, you
I
can
would say if you
reach out to
don't
them next week.
mind, if you have no changes, just email me that too.
Okay,
That way I get a response either way. I'm not trying to make sure you just get off or something.
all right. So that is good. And then
Can I have that one back though, so I make sure I email the right one out?
I need less papers in my stack, so yes, you can have that back. So with that being finished, we would then move to in reverse to the consent agenda. Patty had some questions on, I believe, the financial statement to current.
Yeah, so this is in regards to the abbreviated thing that Shelley sent out. It's for the overtime for sewer fund.
Mhm,
And it was in regards to the overflowing of the lagoon.
mhm.
And I don't know if this really has anything to do with the financials, but was that due to?
Can I?
We should
We've
probably
never-
clarify that we've never
let's
had an
clarify something
overflow.
right now. We've never had an overflowing lagoon.
Well, let her finish her question.
Because it
That would
says,
be, then I worded it wrong because I said that in here. So I took your word, your explanation to me and probably wrote it incorrectly.
so my comment,
That was just a DEQ thing that I'm sure that, right? I was like, oh, uh-oh.
which is now gonna be irrelevant. Cause I was gonna say, would that have anything to do with the new homes being built?
So can you use the correct word for what you guys were doing with the lagoons that created the overtime?
So we're managing a pump so that we could create or discreate an overflow of our dikes. So by managing Lagoon 2 into 3. So basically you're just using a mechanical pump to pump into 3. So that one wouldn't overflow the bank.
So they were working overtime so that it would not overflow.
Correct. A small degree.
That's all I had. So that's all that I was wanting to know.
All right.
Well, let's make a, yeah.
If we're done with that, then can we, Angie, are we allowed to just move backwards to number 6, consent agenda? And so the consent agenda is to approve several routine items, which have been less than routine tonight, that have already been discussed in length in one motion. We've already spoken out and discussed some of those things. So I think that we would be at a point where we could ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as amended earlier this evening.
Second,
Can we get a vote?
Oh, Featherston, aye.
Basquiat.
Corrigan, aye.
And Karen, I.
That was pretty slick. So we would move now to the department reports and we would start with our city administrator. Angie, I apologize. We were bouncing back and forth, so.
Oh, no, it's fine.
So this is the report for, events from last month. We'll start with police like always. And Chief Graven responded to a vehicle crash at Northeast Stillers Mill Road. Attended a sexual assault task force and trauma informed repair meeting. Enforcing flood control at Beulah Park during the snowstorm. Listed with a vehicle crash between the OSB Cooper and Freightliner trailer. And provided materials for a missing family case in Hood River, which perhaps you may have heard about on the news. I don't know, Chief, do you want to expand on anything from this month? Anything on the cases or that OSP crash or anything?
Truck driver that didn't know how to make a corner correctly with a 53-foot trailer.
Not too often that-
Took out the guardrail and went in the ditch.
I think it was a former truck driver now, isn't it? I would imagine.
I cannot speculate.
Not
but-
too often that you get involved with the officer involved vehicle.
But that was actually Officer Van Cleve at Maple and Main.
Oh, that was a different one.
So I guess I can't expound on that because there was an OSP trooper who I've worked with a lot over the years, and he was coming back from training in Newburgh. And instead of going home, he heard the crash went out and he came to see if I needed help and said he would take it. So that's the great relationship that we have with other organizations, including the state police. There were people that were upset with me because they couldn't get through and they were asking why they couldn't get through. So I just pointed and there's no way around.
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing on Hood River that you want to go into.
What is quad control?
There were a lot of ATVs that were out on the road during the snowstorm. And they didn't behave, so I had conversations with them that they were running it for everybody and it's time to go home. And then there were tracks up at the park. I didn't see who it was, but I had an idea, but couldn't prove it, so. And then they were up, another group that I did see were up running around the school, going through the fields and up across the bridge and up over the berms there. So I sent them home as well.
Sounds dangerous.
Corporal Van Cleve did park patrol at Beulah as well, abandoned vehicle and a DUI and welfare check were some of his stops. Monitored the high school basketball game, assisted a cardiac arrest call, and thankfully had attended a CPR certification at the Yamhill Fire District to stay current on that, so that probably helped. And then responded to disturbance at Fireside Grill and also made a warrant arrest. Those are some of his calls. And then Officer Miller monitored the winter formal dance at the high school and responded to a dumping call on Pike Road, a medical call on Maple and Main, criminal mischief case at Calhoun Park, and an active fight at Phillips Road. And also instructed active shooter response for local police jurisdictions. And then School Resource Officer Livingston did his regular traffic patrols and speed enforcement and ongoing work at the Yamhill Carlton schools. Also attended level 1 threat assessments at the intermediate school and attended disciplinary meetings with a few students at the high school. And then also has been working with the new drone and working on his patrol car to bring it up to speed to improve it for using drone operations with this car. And then the statistics for February, they had 225 calls, 11 case reports, 7 arrests, 34 municipal court citations, 148 warnings, 3 circuit court citations, 56 calls for service, and 139 officer initiated contacts. And a little bit more reasonable hours for Chief Graven last month. He was thankfully back to working a little bit more normal. He was full 100 hours more than that the month before, 260 some hours in January, and back to 160 thankfully in February. And then Travis 147, Officer Van Cleve 147, Officer Miller 140, Officer Livingston 65, and you can see the miles driven. It should not say Andrew there for 2,685. It should say total. So that's my mistake. Public Works. At the water treatment plant, they tested the generator backup systems, worked on a DMR report, adjusted the chemical settings, and the water intake remains at 400 gallons per minute, and average distribution is remaining at 115. In wastewater, they performed daily readings and operations on the lagoon systems where there were no overflows and recorded data from PLC and MCC panels and added chemicals to the wastewater treatment plant. And in water distribution, they repaired 1 service line, conducted parts inventory, worked with the contractor on Olive Street water line, and prepped for the project coming up on North Hemlock. And in collections and stormwater, they repaired a storm inlet and checked manholes for inflow and infiltration. And in streets, they completed the Highway 240 sidewalk project and started the Hemlock apron resurfacing. So that's a picture of the new sidewalk. It looks really nice. Did a good job. In parks, they just removed some debris from the park, cleaned up, and repaired the water system, getting ready for the nicer weather. In the administration department, there's ongoing budget preparation for the next fiscal year. Made 9 courtesy calls to water users regarding possible leaks. Worked with PGE on fixing some tower issues we were having to the building. And also worked with a company to get the lights fixed in the kitchen so the sensors actually work and stay on when you walk in.
Let's do it backwards.
Right?
Yeah.
And we are finishing up some painting in the second bathroom. Also, we're doing some ongoing FEMA training for all staff, which ties into our emergency management plans that are coming up. Issued 2 new business licenses and regular updates to our website. And then planning, we hired a new contractor last month, Kurt Fisher from the COG. He started officially with us in March, and he'll be at our next planning commission meeting on Monday. And then we met with Urban Forum, which I think we showed you guys last month, that digital zoning in Yamhill County. That went live well, I think it's going live, in the next month or so. And then our DLC grants team meeting, happened and we finalized the draft proposal that will be going before council with the code updates. And we'll be holding that final meeting, the end of this month, and then it will go before council once that's done. And we had no planning commission, meeting in February, but we are still recruiting for a commissioner position. So if anyone's interested, our application is online. And then, finalize the contract for our Parks Master Plan. We did have our kickoff meeting, for that and, mapped out the schedule, and we will be, I will be putting together a new citizen advisory committee for the parks project. So anyone interested in serving on that should get a hold of me and about that. And with city council, I just had regular weekly meetings with Mayor Corrigan, attended the CIS conference in Salem, attended the revenue budget training, and met with our new counselor, Patty Perrin. Prepped for the council retreat and attended the city county dinner with city councilors. And then community engagement, I met with the Lions Club and YNA on an emergency preparedness event. Met with the Senator Merkley's office regarding congressional funding for next year. Attended the Essentials of Elected Office workshop through the LFC and the Council of Government Administrators meeting, and then conducted contract signing interviews. And upcoming events, March 17th, Monday, we'll have a planning commission meeting. Again, that meeting will be, there's no agenda. I think we're going to do a work session to discuss goals and basically what they want to be working on with our new planners. And then the March 31st is that final citizen advisory committee for our grants. April 8th is the budget work session that we approved tonight on the calendar. And then April 15th, the first budget meeting. April 21st is the next planning commission, and April 22nd is the second. And that's it.
Thank you. Did you want to expand on anything for the police department?
I don't know if anybody has any questions about anything that's been discussed or otherwise.
I would just like to say for your family, congratulations on that. I guess congratulations, I don't know, but great that they ended the Martin case.
Yeah, well, it's still a mystery. There's still more things to work on that with the divers. So it's a partial.
The location of the car, I guess.
Yeah, a partial conclusion.
You had a chance to be there.
Did they confirm it was the car though, or not?
It's, how do you word that? It's still an ongoing investigation and there hasn't been anything definitively answered by the Hood River County Sheriff's Office yet. Because it's a criminal investigation, it's not something that's discussable for those answers.
And then for Public Works, I know that you have some things to add. You want to go, should we do that now?
Yeah, so the two items on there were the, you were gonna talk about the wastewater treatment plant system project initiative that you provided them. You just kind of walk through what that entailed.
You guys have a chance to look that over. Yeah, you guys have any questions in regards to that project? I guess it's as simple as that then.
I think just making you guys aware that that's the next project that's coming on board, and those are the details involving the project, just so you have that information.
And then to the discussion about the project funds for Third and Olives project.
That was the traffic control
Mhm.
line item.
Yeah, so we went out to bid for that project. We received 30 bids for that project. That was the lowest bid that we had from that contractor. And with that said, however they shift their funds in that project, we have no handle on that. So if they want to put 10,000 into traffic control, that's something they can do. All we're looking for is the lowest dollar amount. So it's an anomaly there. So we can't look at, when we get projects, if they want to up their distribution, if they want to up their flagging control, if the traffic control, if they want to up a certain aspect of any of that job criteria, we don't manage that for them. So there again, with 30 bids and them coming in well under the next highest bid, it doesn't really render anything for us to kind of throw a red flag at.
So when you guys do go out to bid on those types of things, is that something that you could, they provide you the line items at that point? Or did they just come in with a number like, hey, this is what we could do it for, this one number?
So we provide, obviously the scope of work, the design of work. From that point on, then they just pretty much put together their own packet, and it doesn't have any specifications on where those line items are coming from. It's just a dollar amount. And then when we go to contract with them, then we start seeing how things are broken out.
Okay, but would that not be a good time though to look at something like that and be like, hey, we might be able to save, understanding companies like that would almost have to put some padding into it in case a thing goes terribly wrong for them.
Right.
I'd rather just see that as a contingency budget as opposed to $10,000 for traffic control signs, if that makes sense.
Kind of elaborate on that when you say a contingency budget, sure.
So I mean, because in any construction project, you're gonna come up with the inevitable, right?
Right.
For example, the horse blanket wrapped
Yeah,
with
there's-
ratchet strap pipe that was sitting across from Larson House for years. Nobody could have expected that when you dug into it, and that would change the scope of work.
Correct.
And understanding the scope of work could change based on what you find when you uncover streets that have been buried for 60 years. I guess where some of us were a little bit just concerned with that, and certainly having nothing to do with you and your public works department, but just that rather seemingly high number for a traffic control plan that consisted of 10 signs.
But there again, from a legal standpoint and how we do that, we can't justify where they're spending that money. So I can't say, we don't want to see this $10,000 worth of traffic control. Take it out, because where are they gonna put that number? No matter where they put that number, it's still gonna be the lowest bid. There's no contingency on that project. There again, referring back to what you're saying, is there is gonna be change orders. And typically when you're dragging in the lowest bidding contractor, I mean, we've all seen this where that's where they're trying to manipulate that dollar. They're trying to find that change order where they can manipulate that to capture more revenue into that project. And there again, there is certain instances where you just don't know, I mean, our maps show everything linear, straight and perfect. So we can't really justify when there's an offset valve or an offset water line or a service line that came from nowhere. So I don't know how we could really go about as a city trying to justify their contract to us when they're the lowest bidder. I don't know if we could create a contingency or catch-all that we could use for, other parts of that project to save on. It's pretty much the game that we're in.
How does it work when so if they're the lowest bidder, are you allowed to talk to them and negotiate with price and stuff after that? Or is it just like, that's the lowest?
That's their dollar.
Okay.
I mean, we do have the possibility to negotiate to the next step up as far as the next contractor up. If we wanted to go that happy medium, we want to bring in a different contractor if we're not happy with who received that bid or
Yeah.
received that job.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty much the only wiggle room we have within that contract.
We were able to save money though, because like you saved 14,000 on this one where they didn't do certain work and instead what they needed to do work on, instead of charging us for, they took some work off.
Correct. I mean, there's negotiations within the scope of work once we've, the contractor, the construction has begun. We saved, and let me tell you this, I mean, I think most people know this, but just to say it out loud, when they're going for those change orders, I mean, they're going for a pretty large number. I mean, they're trying to make some money. Let's just be honest. I mean, we had a service line that was probably probably 50 linear feet that they were gonna charge us $10,000 for. We did at Public Works, we did the work for 2 days worth of labor. So that, there is cost savings there when we see these change orders, but.
So that's why I was wondering, like with the 10,000 line item specifically, that traffic control line item, can we say, hey, we have a way to do this cheaper and take that off and spend the 10,000 on maybe something else?
Then the city would be taking on the liability of the traffic control. like we discussed, Shelley, if like we go out there and physically put up signs or steel plates and something is mismanaged or there was an accident that occurs, then the city holds on to that liability. Hence why they probably create a larger buffer within their traffic control, because the traffic control, you know, you have to come up with a plan, you have to regulate that plan, you have to follow the scope of that plan. And if there was any kind of hole, anything missing in that traffic plan, I don't think it would be at the city's best interest to be, you know, liable for that and overseeing that, so.
I think if you ask them about it, that would be a reason, like would liability of those signs.
I think, I guess just in a general question here is council asking, can we take away traffic control in a plan? Say, you know, just saying like.
Actually, by state law, can't.
Right, so that's why I was gonna go, Shay, is, you know, if it's 10,000, can we say, hey, for 5,000, we'll do X? You know, I don't think the city would be putting itself in a good position, in my opinion, if we took over something of that nature. I mean.
I think where this all comes up is just simply to the point that, I mean, those signs are, you know, if you
Generic.
you rent the generic sign, it's $17.50 a week. There's 10 of them.
Correct.
And it's 10 grand. And the traffic control studies online.
Oh,
So I mean, it's a PDF that you can download. So I guess where I'm saying is that because, and nothing certainly against Public Works, and yes, they were the lowest bidder. And also, we're a very small town with no urban growth boundary room. So we need to start looking at ways where we can save some money periodically. And maybe it is something that we need to look at. If there was another company that we could go to in the future for things like traffic control, or anywhere where your expertise, you could find a way to save that 5 grand, 8 grand, whatever it might be, to put back into your account for new vehicles, for upgrades to pumps, to whatever it might be. Every one of those dollars we save would go back into the benefit of the city. So it wasn't meant to be a disrespectful question when we asked it.
no.
It was just simply, we need to maximize the tax dollars that we have available to us and don't want to squander a penny if we don't have to.
Yeah, you know, with the scope of a project, say Olive Street's a perfect example. If we run into a situation where Public Works or even outside contracting can fix or something, then the contract with the contractor becomes skewed, because then we're taking on that responsibility in that specific area. So if we look further down the line with, you know, we have a 2-year grace period with this contractor, if something goes wrong, then we're going back to them and say, hey, you have to fix it. And then there's no dollar amount scheduled to that or type to that. But if we start to take on scopes of that work where, you know, they could start legally pressing us like your fittings, your mechanical components, your labor, you know, cause that defect. And then you're kind of situating yourself at a loss long-term.
Jason, when it comes to hiring these guys to do the work, you know, over on Olive, for instance, do you have any ability or capability of knowing who they've worked for before to find out what the end result is and how much they charge for basically the same type of work?
Yeah, I mean, there's the contractors board, you know, we do a reference check, you know, things of that nature. So it's pretty simplistic, you know, we just have to do our homework with what contractor we're bringing in, which there again goes back to what I was stating, that we do have the ability, if we do not like that lowest bidder, we can negotiate with the median, like where we want to land. I mean, with the Olive Street project, the next bidder was $275,000 above this one. So that just tells you that gap is pretty significant. So when we're talking about the significance of like flagging control or traffic control, it's like, you know, at 10,000, whatever they're putting here in this pot really isn't gonna make up for what would be spending for the median. So.
Yeah, it's a little jagged pill to swallow, because I've never
Oh, I
signed a
understand.
check for $236,000 before. So you can bet I looked at every line item.
Oh, and fair
You
enough.
know.
That's what, I appreciate you doing that. And I think these questions should be raised. You know, in all respect to any contractor that comes in here, I think we need to do a higher due diligence. You know,
And I think that's all that we were really asking by bringing it up, is just like anything we can think of, even outside of the box, things where we can ask, bring it down, save it, look here and there. Because again, there's not one department in this town that couldn't use extra money right now.
You know, Sherry, you bring up a good point, like Hemlock's project,
Mhm.
this North Hemlock's project, you know, working with that contractor, he's saying, okay, well, here's my price is X. And then we said, well, we'll take on traffic control,
Mhm.
we'll throw you labor, we'll purchase materials ourselves, so we don't see those markups.
Mhm.
You know, on a ductile iron pipe, like we scoped that out for the North Hemlock project. I mean, we were looking $10,000 to $12,000, where with some of these projects, that's a 20-40% markup. So, you know, if the contractors allow us to get involved to a certain degree, yeah, we can take that on. That's something we need to sit down and work with our engineers before we go out to bid.
Yep,
You know,
absolutely.
major projects, I think you're better off being hands-off in a situation and just kind of monitoring or going from the perspective like construction management. Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of things that don't get seen, but just to put it out loud that we're trying to cut those costs within, you know, our engineering, construction management, you know, us as a public works, taking more of that on, you know, taking that kind of liability on. So, yeah, no, there
I
again.
know we appreciate
No,
the work that you're doing with that, so.
you know, and not to keep this and prolong this conversation, you know, we did meet with our engineer, we did meet with the contractor. And quite honestly, the communication was very poor on that job,
Okay.
all the way around. And we let them know it, and, you know, I take some of that on the chin myself, and, you know, we stated in that meeting, we will all get better. And I think, you know, by seeing or showing you guys like this disinfection project where you guys can look at the layout, kind of see the timelines, I think it's a very key component or key to what you guys can kind of enthrall yourself in. So when these questions get raised, you can say, you know, item 1A, okay, we saw that coming. You know, that, I think council needs these reference points to look at, so.
And I think it's also important for when we go out to bid and for our engineers and stuff, for them to be aware that council's looking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So keep the old saying, right? Keep it honest, man, honest.
Yep. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's,
Oh, I didn't have anything more.
okay. We would go on then to council reports and so first one is mayor's report, and I just would kind of like to thank all of our staff and the views that I put Angie through periodically, and Kim. I like it. I feel like there's an opportunity, if not moving towards really some unity where everybody's working together for common causes, sharing the information like Jason just did with us and so forth. And all the hard work that, you know, ladies in the front office do every day. So I just wanted to say thank you guys for that. And that's all I have for the mayor's report. That would move us to councilor's report. Got anything to report?
I have some information. It's not a report. And it's more for Jason than anybody else.
Is it for public or would that be better to be done after?
Actually, it's in regards to water. Extending possibly our water till we can get more water.
Is this something that is a surprise?
I think that would be a
No,
possible
it's-
report and more of a conversation to have with Jason, and then maybe it could be moved into a report for the next meeting.
That's fine.
Does that work?
We can do that.
The next would be information and announcements. Is that gonna go to our city administrator?
Yeah, well, me or you, it doesn't matter. It's kind of, I think, of repeating what we already said in the report. The OGC, this is just an announcement. The OGC SEI filing opens March 15th with the deadline of April 15th. So be watching for that, so you can get that filled out and not get dinged after April 15th. For council, March 31st, again, final citizen advisory committee. Everyone is welcome to attend that, although it will be coming before you. And, April 8th, is the budget overview, and then April 15th is the first budget meeting. That's it.
I did skip over a thing just previous to that, which was the workers' comp volunteer hours report.
That's just your monthly reminder to fill that out. You
And
have
we
a
should all do
link.
that, myself included, very soon.
That is a safe requirement.
I am up to date.
Sweet. He's got a good app if anybody,
Everybody has the link, and if you have trouble accessing it,
Or need any help.
Angie's your gal. She's our high-tech gal.
Well, since our high-tech gal's been here since dark 30 this morning, if there's nothing else, I would take a motion.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second. Third. I have a question now. What's going on?
Meeting's over.
You're
No more
cleaning
talking.
all that. Well, this is gonna be, all how you cleaned all the park up down. What's the plan?